Back in 2017, it took approximately 4 to 6 weeks to get approved for a home care package. Now, it's taking 16 weeks on average to get approved for the same types of services. In some parts of the country, it's taking 7, even 8 months to get assessed. And once assessed and approved, then you go on the waiting list to actually receive the funding to get that support. And with the new supported home program only a few months away, my prediction is that things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. And one of the biggest red flags is a new rule that means people needing additional services or a change in the types of services that they are currently getting, they're going to need to get reassessed every time a change is required. Now, to some that might actually sound like a small change, but in practice, it's actually a game changer and not in a good way. Let me explain. Hey friends, before we dive in, a quick favor. I put a lot of time and effort into these videos to help make navigating the aged care system just that little bit easier for yourself or a loved one. And seeing people subscribe to the channel, honestly, is the best yardstick that I have to tell me that the content and topics that I'm recording about is actually what you want to hear. It also tells YouTube that this particular content, it's worth sharing with other older adults all around the country. And these are people and families who need this information the most. So by hitting that subscribe button, you're showing me that you're part of this village local community, that you're looking out for each other, and that you want to make aged care easier for everybody in your local community. So if you haven't already done it, hit that subscribe button. It'd mean so much. Thank you in advance. Okay, so here's how things work right now. Under the Home Care Packages program, that's the system that we've got at the moment. If you need a new service like cleaning, personal care, some domestic assistance, you can usually just shuffle things around in your existing care plan to get access to those services, as long as your provider also agrees that you need access to those services. But with support at home, you can't do that reshuffle anymore, at least in the simplified way that it's currently being done. If you currently need a different type of help to be added to your care plan, let's say like wound care, physiotherapy, some sort of allied health service, and you're not currently getting those types of services, you can't just update your care plan anymore by calling your home care provider case manager to say, hey, I need a bit of physio, can you organize that for me? Instead, you'll need to do a reassessment to get approved for that additional type of service offering. And a few moments ago, we just talked about how much of a blowout in the waiting times it's ending up becoming to get access to those assessments. So yeah, more delays, more stress. And that's just the beginning. Let me break down exactly what's changing. All right, picture this. With home care packages, let's say you had a fall and now you realize you need some more help at home. You call your provider, you explain to them what's happened, and you flag to them what you think would make life a little bit easier for you. They would most likely agree with you, and they'd simply update the care plan and start organizing the delivery of those services. They'd have a look, have you got enough in your budget, in your funds to cover those costs? And if that's a yes, then they deliver those services. If it's a no, well then they'd look at your budget and go, you know what? You desperately need physiotherapy. We can see that you're getting gardening services once every 3 or 4 weeks. Why don't we extend that out to every 4 to 5 weeks? And remember, this is only if you don't have enough in your budget. Why don't we extend that gardening to extra every 4 to 5 weeks? That'll free up some money and we can afford to put in that physio with the current home care package funding that you got. Right? So it's really a tight conversation between you and the person that knows you, which is your case manager, to make it happen in a really efficient, short amount of time. But with the supported home program, totally different story, at least with the information that we've been given at this point in time. Let me break this down for you. So same as before, you've realized you need more help. First person that you call is you call your provider and your case manager, and you take them through what's happened and what you think would be most useful for you. And here's where things start to deviate. The first thing your provider is going to do is they're going to check what you're asking. Is it within the realms of what you're currently approved for, or is it going to open you up to a new service type that you need to get approved for? Most of the time it's going to be a new service type because you're going to be asking for something above and beyond what you're currently already experiencing. So when that happens, either they have to request a new assessment or they will direct you to call up My Aged Care to actually request a support plan review. And it's at this stage that the reassessment process starts taking place. Now, all we've got to sort of hypothesize over this is what is currently happening. And I can't imagine any big swing changes happening within the next few months for the introduction of this supported home program. It's likely that this reassessment support plan review process is going to be modeled, maybe not identically, but very close to what we currently see in place. And that is when an assessment request goes off to My Aged Care, an initial triaging conversation takes place. Call it a triaging assessment takes place. And the purpose of that triage is to decide, is this a clinical request or is it a non-clinical request? A non-clinical type of service that you're asking for? Well, then it can be approved by a non-clinical assessor. However, if it's a clinical type of service that you're requiring, because it's a clinical condition that you're trying to solve, then it's going to have to go to a clinical assessment team. Now, I'm not too concerned about the non-clinical types of requests. Currently, in the existing assessment process, those non-clinical type of assessments, they're taking 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks to get done. It's the clinical ones that I'm very, very concerned about. The clinical ones are the most highest priority. Challenge is, doesn't matter how much funding you throw at an assessment team to do more clinical assessments, you're still bottlenecked. And you're bottlenecked by the availability of clinically trained personnel. But just to finish this section off, the clinical assessment person will then make their evaluation of your situation, and then they will rubber stamp it and give an approval. That approval will then eventually make its way back to your provider with hypothetically an updated care plan that you are now approved for. And it's at that stage that the provider can communicate that or explain that to you in an effective way. You'll probably also get correspondence from aged care that you've been approved for these things as well. But there's got to be some sort of alignment that, yep, we're now approved. Let's start now planning the deployment of those services. And once planned and booked in, well, then you can start receiving them. So instead of ask for help, adjust the plan, deliver services, it's now request help, wait for triage, do clinical assessment, feed information back to provider and consumer about what they're approved for, what they're not approved for, then plan for the delivery of services. And it's that middle section where it's gone off to the My Aged Care team, the government department, to make its way through the bureaucracy of it all, which is, if what we're experiencing now is any yardstick on the times that we're going to be waiting, we're going to be talking 120 to 150 days to do these clinically focused care plan reviews. You put that in comparison to the simplified model, and we're dealing with something pretty scary here. And that is why I'm seeing so many people in the community really worried about this. Because when you need help, especially clinically focused help, you can't afford to wait. You need it now, not months from now. And as far as I can see, it's really going to be one of those scenarios where the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So if you're one of those older Aussies that's stoic and, rolls up the sleeves and just gets on with life, no matter how hard it gets, well, those sort of characters that we all know and love in the community, unfortunately, you're the one that's going to be disadvantaged by this. It's really not about that. I'll go into what you can do to prevent yourself from falling through the cracks. But before I do that, I just want to talk a little bit about why waiting lists, particularly for assessments, are blowing out so much. And to explain this, let's wind it back a little bit. You see, for years, the aged care system, and in particular those doing the assessments, that world was split into two camps. First, you had the RAS team, that stands for Regional Assessment Service Team. They handled the simpler things like entry-level house cleaning, transport, and maybe some meal delivery. And they could get you access to that entry-level services known as the Commonwealth Home Support Program pretty quickly, within weeks. But for situations a little bit more complex, so for those living with a few different chronic conditions that needed help more likely on a weekly basis, and a person's condition was kind of fluctuating, the RAS team, who do the initial assessment, they were supposed to be referring that person to the ACAT team, or ACAS team if you're in Victoria. That stands for the Aged Care Assessment Team. And it's this ACAT or ACAS team that handle the approval of home care packages. So when a RAS team needed to refer a client to an ACAT team, they had to deal with the friction that comes with transferring a client and client notes from one organisation to a totally different organization where there's no integration or very limited integration and certainly limited relationship between these two organizations. The end result, people falling through the cracks and the urgency of people's situations falling on deaf ears by the clinical assessment teams. This dynamic has been a huge reason for the delays. However, on December 9th, there were some really, really big changes made. December 9th, 2024, that is. The government rolled out across the country this new tool called the Integrated Assessment Tool, sometimes called the Single Assessment Tool. And with that, the government merged things to become holistically one type of assessment system. As of December 9th, what is happening now is, first of all, a series of new organizations have won the grant to deliver on the Single Assessment Tool. So these organizations, to be able to be awarded this grant, a single organization needs to have both non-clinical and clinical people within the one organization to deliver the full assessment tool. So with that, what's happening is a non-clinical person starts delivering on the assessment tool. So when I say assessment tool, all it is really is a survey, right? It's a questionnaire that a non-clinical person starts with the person, goes through with the person who's requesting support. And as they go through the questionnaire, some of the questions, based on the answer of those that the person provides, that might prompt that person, the assessor, to ask a clinically related question. Now, that non-clinical person, they're not qualified to ask that clinical related question, so it gets flagged for one of their colleagues who is clinically trained to answer that question. The idea is these assessments are going to get done quicker. But here's the problem. The supported home program is about to flood the system with a barrage of new assessments that are going to now be required. We're talking thousands of assessments, all needing urgent updates. So have we actually fixed the problem? Or are we about to make it worse? I'll tell you one thing that's for sure. We're about to find out in just a few months' time. Now, I sincerely hope that this isn't a scenario where we've taken one step forward, but two steps back, with adding the additional bureaucracy of getting access to urgent support services in an environment where the system wasn't broken. It's one of the most beautiful things about the current home care package system. But again, we'll wait and see. Let me take you through some things that you can keep front of mind and act on to make sure that you are shielding yourself from any tsunami of challenge that we might see. So let me give you 3 tips to weather the storm and to make the process a little bit easier. Point number 1, and that is to act early. Don't wait for a crisis to eventuate. If your needs are changing, get reassessed before it becomes urgent. There's nothing worse with dealing with a problem when you're already in crisis mode. So start acting before you get to crisis mode. The second piece of advice that I want to give you is be honest. When it comes to the assessment, there's absolutely no need to overplay the challenges that you're facing. What you need to work on is be honest, be accurate, and say it how it is. Now is not the time for stoicism. Okay, point number 3. If you've had an assessment and things get worse after that assessment, you need to raise it. You need to speak up. You need to flag it. Don't just think, oh, well, I recently had an assessment a few days ago, a few weeks ago, or even a few months ago, so I just have to wait till that comes through and then I'll deal with it after. No. It doesn't matter if you had an assessment yesterday. If your situation has changed, deteriorated since your last assessment, even if it was yesterday, you call up My Aged Care, you make your case manager aware, you call up the assessor, you reach out and you say, hey, look, since we last spoke, this is what's happened. I've fallen ill. You make it known to them that when you saw me last, I'm now worse than that. So we need to either do another assessment or we need to increase the priority level of accessing those services. If you want extra guidance, then check out the Care Path Navigator program. The link's in the description below and I've also put it in the comments section. This is an online education area that has lots of videos, lots of articles, all the most popular YouTube segments that I've put together. It's all in there for you to reference and for you to access and even for you to query now and ask questions to get you the answers that you need to stay living independently and well at home. And as you register for the CarePath Navigator program, you also get access to the Village Local Community Hub. This is an online forum that has thousands of older adults across the country and family carers across Australia who are themselves navigating their way through the aged care system. They're at all stages of the home care system. So chances are you're not only going to find somebody who's experienced the challenges that you've experienced, but somebody who's managed to go through those challenges, come out the other end, know how to navigate that problem, and is more than willing to share their cheat notes with you by simply asking them, hey guys, here's my challenge. Anyone suggest anything better? CarePath Navigator program, check it out in the link below. I'm sure you'll find it useful. I'll catch you in the next video.